The first minute will make your heart stop. The door opened without a sound, and Sandra Bullock walked in. The room was quiet, full of soft light, and the smell of fresh flowers. KeanuReeves stood near the window, hands in his pockets, his face calm but tired. Alexandra Grant sat at a small table with 2 cups of tea that had already gone cold. The moment Sandra stepped inside, Alexandra looked up, and her face said what words could not. It was shock, hurt, and a kind of brave silence that breaks a person from the inside. Keanu had invited them both to this private room above a small charity gallery, hoping to bring peace to a storm he never wanted. He respected both women. He wanted kindness to lead the way. He wanted truth to feel gentle. But truth does not always arrive in gentle clothes. Sometimes it walks in on quiet feet, like Sandra did. And everything changes without a single loud sound. Sandra took a breath before speaking. Her voice was soft, careful, full of respect. "I did not come to win anything," she said. "I came to tell the truth before the world tells a lie." Keanu felt the weight in those words. Alexandra kept her eyes on Sandra, and even without a tear, the grief in her face was clear. She had always been strong, always steady, but in this moment, she looked like someone holding on to a rope that was slowly burning her hands. "I am not your enemy," Sandra added, her voice shaking. "But I cannot pretend anymore. I care for him. I have for a long time. I tried to be only a friend, because that is what respect looks like. But my heart did not listen." Keanu closed his eyes for a second. He had lived his life with humility, choosing quiet, choosing service, choosing to make pain smaller for others. Now his choices were making pain bigger, and that thought cut him. Alexandra finally spoke, almost in a whisper. "You walked in, and my heart understood before my mind did. I can see it in your eyes. You love him." The words were not angry. They were tired, honest, and brave. She turned to Keanu. "And you, do you love her?" The room went still. A car passed by outside, its shadow sliding over the wall like a slow wave. Keanu searched for the most honest answer that would still be kind. "I love both of you," he said, "in different ways. One is years of steady light. The other is a sunrise I did not expect. I did not plan any of this. I only know I do not want to hurt either of you." Sandra lowered her eyes. Alexandra folded her hands, as if she was holding something fragile. "You cannot stand in the doorway forever," Alexandra said gently. "If you wait too long, all 3 of us will drown." A sudden knock came from the gallery below, and a voice called up the stairs, "They are here." Cameras, the spell broke. Sandra looked at the door. Alexandra looked at the window. Keanu looked at both of them. 3 hearts, 1 truth, no easy road. And the cameras were already climbing the steps. The sound of footsteps grew louder from below. Flashes of light bounced off the staircase as photographers shouted Keanu's name. Sandra's heartbeat quickened. Alexandra stood up slowly, her calm breaking. Keanu moved first, walking to the door, his voice low but firm. "No one deserves this," he said. "We'll go down together. No one hides." The 3 of them stepped out into the noise. Flashes, shouting, chaos. Questions flew like arrows. "Keanu, are you in love with Sandra? Alexandra, are you two breaking up? Is this the end of Hollywood's quiet couple?" Keanu raised a hand gently. "No comments," he said softly, guiding Sandra and Alexandra into the waiting car. Inside, the air felt heavier than before. Alexandra turned her face toward the window, watching the crowd fade. Sandra sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Keanu looked between them, trying to breathe through the guilt pressing against his chest. When the car stopped at his house, Alexandra was the first to speak. "Keanu, this cannot go on like this," she said quietly. "You tried to make peace, but now it's war in every headline." He sighed. "I didn't want this to turn ugly. I only wanted truth." She turned to him, her voice trembling slightly. "Truth doesn't always save people. Sometimes it breaks them first." She opened the door, ready to leave, but paused for one last look. "I love you, Keanu. But love isn't enough when it hurts every time you breathe." The door closed behind her, leaving silence. Sandra exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen." Keanu looked at her with tired eyes. "You didn't do this alone, Sandra. I let it happen. I should have known hearts don't stay quiet forever. She smiled sadly. You've always been the calm in the storm. Maybe that's why I fell. He looked down. And maybe that's why I'm scared. That night, news spread across the world. Social media filled with opinions, some calling Sandra selfish, others blaming Alexandra, a few praising Keanu for honesty. But inside his home, the world was small again. He sat by the fireplace, the light flickering across his face, remembering years of friendship, laughter, shared secrets, and moments when silence had said more than words. His phone buzzed again. Sandra had messaged, "Are you okay?" He typed back slowly, "I don't know, but thank you for being honest." She replied, "I couldn't live with pretending." "Not with you." Keanu leaned back, closing his eyes. He thought of Alexandra's quiet strength, the way she understood art, love, and pain. He thought of Sandra's warmth, her laughter that always filled a room. He had spent his life building peace in a world that thrived on noise. And now his heart was caught between two kinds of love, one steady, one unexpected. The next morning, as sunlight touched the glass walls of his home, he whispered to himself, "Sometimes love isn't about choosing who you want. It's about choosing who you can't lose." And somewhere deep down, he knew that soon a choice would have to be made. The next morning, the world woke up louder than ever. Headlines screamed his name, and every network ran stories about KeanuReeves caught between two loves. The internet was flooded with old photos of him and Sandra on movie sets, laughing together, side by side. Alexandra's photos too, showing her walking alone through the airport, face calm but eyes distant. Keanu didn't check his phone that morning. He couldn't. Instead, he stood by the kitchen window, staring at the quiet street outside. He thought about calling Alexandra, but couldn't find the right words. What could he say that wouldn't sound like guilt? What could he say that wouldn't sound like goodbye? His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message, it was Sandra calling. He answered after a long silence. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. "Keanu, can we meet?" "Somewhere quiet." He hesitated, then agreed. They met later that afternoon at a small park they used to visit years ago, hidden behind rows of tall oak trees. There were no cameras, no flashing lights, just wind, rustling leaves, and the sound of water from a nearby fountain. Sandra was already there, sitting on a bench with a small paper cup of coffee. When she looked up, her eyes carried both strength and sadness. "I saw the news," she said quietly. "People are saying awful things about Alexandra, about me. I can't stop reading them." "Don't," Keanu said softly, sitting beside her. "The world doesn't know what's real." She looked down. "Maybe not, but I know what I feel is real." The words hung in the air. She hesitated, then whispered, "Keanu, I don't want to be the reason you lose someone who has been your anchor. Alexandra gave you peace. I don't want to take that away." Keanu looked at her with gentle eyes. "Peace isn't the same as happiness, Sandra. Peace is quiet. Happiness is alive. And I don't know the last time I felt alive." Her lips trembled slightly. "What are you saying?" Before he could answer, a voice broke the stillness behind them. "He's saying exactly what you want to hear." They turned. Alexandra stood a few feet away, her expression calm, but her eyes bright with tears. She had found them not through cameras, not through anyone else, just by following what her heart refused to let go of. Sandra stood quickly, guilt rushing through her chest. "Alexandra, I didn't know you were." Alexandra lifted a hand. "It's all right. I needed to see it for myself." She turned to Keanu. "I came to tell you something. I'm not angry anymore." Keanu rose to his feet, cautious, searching her face. "You don't have to forgive me. It's not about forgiveness," she said softly. "It's about truth. I've been trying to hold on to something that was already changing. I thought love meant staying, even when it hurt. But now I understand it also means letting go when the time comes." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. Alexandra smiled faintly. "You don't need to explain. I saw it in your eyes the moment you walked in that day. Love doesn't hide. It shows itself, whether we want it to or not." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying her words like a whisper through the park. Alexandra looked at Keanu one last time. "Take care of her, and take care of yourself." Then she turned and walked away slowly, her figure fading through the trees until she was gone. Sandra stood frozen. Keanu watched her disappear, his heart heavy but strangely clear. For the first time, there were no lies left between any of them. Only truth, and truth, even when it hurts, brings peace. For days after that meeting in the park, Keanu couldn't shake the silence Alexandra left behind. Her last words stayed in his mind like an echo that refused to fade. He admired her strength, her calm acceptance, and it broke him a little to know that kindness had come from heartbreak. Sandra stayed quiet too. She didn't call, she didn't text. She wanted to give him time to heal, to think, to breathe. But time didn't heal right away. Keanu spent his evenings alone, walking through Los Angeles when the streets were empty. The city lights blurred through his tired eyes, and memories played in flashes. Alexandra painting in her studio, Sandra laughing between movie takes, and himself standing between them, wishing love was as simple as people believed it to be. One evening, as he returned home, he found an envelope at his doorstep. It was from Alexandra. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a letter, written in her soft handwriting. Dear Keanu, you once told me love is like music. It only works when everyone listens to the same rhythm. I think our rhythm has changed. I still care for you, but I can't keep holding on to something that has already moved on. I'm not leaving in anger. I'm leaving in peace. You gave me beautiful years, and I'll always be grateful. Yours, Alexandra. He folded the letter carefully and placed it on his piano. He sat there for a long time, staring at the keys, then began to play a soft tune. It was full of sadness and truth, but there was warmth in it too, the kind that only comes after letting go. A few days later, Sandra appeared at his gate. She looked hesitant, like someone who didn't know if they were welcome. Keanu opened the door, and for a moment, they just stood there. I heard she's gone, Sandra said softly. He nodded. She left me a letter, and she forgave me. She forgave us. Sandra's eyes glistened. She's stronger than both of us, isn't she? Keanu smiled sadly. Maybe she always was. They walked inside, sitting near the fire as the night grew quiet. Sandra spoke first. Keanu, I don't know what happens next. I don't want to rush anything. I just want to know if we still have a chance to start new, not as the world sees us, but as to people trying to heal. He looked at her for a long moment, his voice low and steady. We've both carried guilt. Maybe now it's time to carry grace instead. She smiled faintly. Grace. That's a beautiful word. It's what she gave us, he said. For the first time in weeks, Sandra reached out and held his hand. It was not a romantic gesture. It was quiet, human, full of understanding. The fire crackled between them, soft and alive. The world outside could say whatever it wanted. They had chosen truth, and truth had finally chosen peace and return. As midnight passed, Keanu whispered, sometimes love doesn't end when people part. Sometimes it just changes shape and finds new ways to stay. And Sandra, with tears in her eyes, nodded. Then maybe this is just the beginning of something honest. The world eventually moved on, but not completely. People still whispered, headlines still appeared now and then. And every time Sandra and Keanu were seen together, cameras flashed like lightning. But behind all that noise, their lives had grown quieter, simpler, almost peaceful. They met often but never rushed anything. They shared coffee in the mornings, long walks by the ocean at dusk, and gentle conversations that felt like healing. Still, the past had not disappeared. One morning, as Keanu sat reading a script at his kitchen table, he received a call from a mutual friend. Alexandra had an art exhibition opening in Paris. For a moment, he froze. It had been months since she left, and the idea of seeing her name again stirred something deep inside him. Not pain, not love, but respect. That evening, he called Sandra. She's having an exhibition, he said softly. Sandra paused on the other end. You're thinking about going, aren't you? I think I need to, he replied. Not to fix anything, just to say thank you for how she let us go with grace. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then go, she said. And when you come back, maybe we can finally stop looking backward. A week later, Keanu flew to Paris. The exhibition was in a small art gallery tucked between narrow streets. The air smelled of paint and rain. When he walked inside, He saw Alexandra surrounded by people, calm and radiant in her own quiet way. When their eyes met, she smiled, not with surprise, but with understanding. They talked briefly near one of her paintings. She asked about his films, about Sandra, and he answered with honesty. "We're both trying to live kindly," he said. "Trying to honor what you taught us." She smiled faintly. "Then I think my leaving meant something after all." She looked around at her art, the colors reflecting her new piece. "Sometimes, love isn't about staying. It's about inspiring someone to grow without you." Keanu nodded slowly. "You did that." They said goodbye again, this time without tears. When he left the gallery, the night air felt lighter. Back in Los Angeles, Sandra waited at the airport. When she saw him walking through the terminal, she smiled softly. "So, did you find closure?" He stopped in front of her. "Not closure," he said. "Understanding." As they drove home, the city lights reflected in her eyes. "You always say things that make silence feel safe," she whispered. He looked at her, a quiet smile touching his lips. Maybe that's what love is, the silence that feels like home. That night, they cooked together in his kitchen, laughing softly as music played in the background. There were no cameras, no scripts, no pretending. Just two people who had survived the noise of the world and found comfort in something real. Before going to sleep, Sandra stood by the window, looking at the stars. "Do you think she's happy now?" Keanu joined her. "I think she was always looking for peace. Now she finally has it." He took her hand gently. "And maybe, now, it's our turn to live." The night was quiet, full of soft wind and the faint hum of the city, and in that quiet, the past finally let them go. Months passed quietly after Paris. Keanu and Sandra settled into a rhythm that felt soft, slow, and real. There were no grand declarations, no public appearances, no flashing lights. They found peace in simple things: cooking breakfast, walking their dogs, watching old movies they once starred in together. For the first time in a long time, their hearts didn't feel like they were fighting the world. They were just resting. But peace didn't mean life stopped testing them. One morning, a journalist reached out with an offer Keanu wasn't expecting. A magazine wanted to feature his life story, focusing on his kindness, humility, and the strength he found through loss and love. He agreed, but only if Sandra would be part of it. She hesitated at first. "You sure you want to open that door again?" she asked quietly. Keanu nodded. "Maybe it's time we tell our story the right way, not the way headlines twisted it." The interview took place in a quiet studio with soft lights. The interviewer asked gently, "Keanu, after everything that happened, do you still believe love can survive the chaos of fame?" He smiled faintly. "Love doesn't survive because of fame. It survives despite it. It's the quiet choice you make every day, to stay kind, to stay honest, to stay grateful." Sandra, sitting beside him, added softly, "We didn't plan this. We just kept showing up for each other. Maybe that's what love really is, showing up even when it's hard." The interviewer nodded, moved. The photos from that day later went viral, not because of drama, but because of their calmness. The world didn't see a scandal anymore. They saw two people who had been through storms and still chose grace. That night, Keanu and Sandra sat on the porch, watching the sunset burn orange over the hills. Sandra leaned her head on his shoulder. "You think Alexandra saw the article?" Keanu smiled softly. "Maybe. And if she did, I hope she smiled too." The wind carried the scent of jasmine through the air, and for a long moment, they didn't speak. It was the kind of silence that held peace instead of pain. Then Sandra whispered, "Do you ever think about how this all began? That night when I walked in, and Alexandra looked at me?" He nodded slowly. "I do. I think about how one moment can change everything. How truth hurts, but still saves us in the end." She smiled faintly. Her face said what words couldn't, and yet, maybe that silence gave us a new beginning. Keanu turned to her, his voice gentle. "We didn't steal happiness from anyone, Sandra. We just waited long enough for life to give it back." She looked at him, eyes shimmering. "Then let's never take it for granted." He reached for her hand, holding it softly. Never. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the city lights began to glow in the distance. The world outside moved fast as always, full of noise, headlines, and opinions, but up there on that quiet porch, time slowed down. Two souls who had once been broken by truth now sat whole again, bound not by guilt or fame, but by kindness, patience, and the courage to love honestly. And in that still moment, Keanu whispered the words that ended their long journey, the words the world had waited years to hear. She once walked in and changed everything. But you, Sandra, you stayed, and that made all the difference. The wind carried his voice into the night, soft and steady, the sound of peace after the storm.